Good evening, everybody. Good evening, friends, and welcome to part 6 of Connected Mothers. This is our closing session for this year, for this series. Very, very excited. We've been doing parenting in the light of the 12 principles of energized living. Tonight, we're going to be doing something that's based on principle number 3. Let's do a quick review. In principle number 1, we talked about aligning our beliefs with Hashem's reality. The world gives us one view of reality and one set of values. We measure value by external stuff, by what we could see and touch. And that leads us to parent from the outside in. It leads us to parent with a perspective only on results and mostly on externals and behavior and compliance, as opposed to the inner quality of our relationship and the connection we're forming every single day with every interaction with our child. So that was principle number 1, aligning with Hashem's reality, where what matters most is that neshama connection that we have with our child and that our child has with themselves and with Hashem, to see themselves as carriers of Hashem's light and as key players in Hashem's world who are empowered to make a difference and to make choices. So that was principle number 1. Principle number 2 was Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. To attribute all power only to Hashem. And we talked about letting go of fear, because if Hashem is our only power, we can dial down our hyperactive fight or flight instinct and engage with our child, not from a place of fear, but from a place of awareness, love, and connection. Tonight, Be'ezus Hashem, we're going to be doing principle number 3, which is in every generation, we are obligated to see ourselves as if we ourselves went out of Mitzrayim. This is a very opportune time to be doing this, because we are in the middle of learning the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim in the Parshas HaShavua. And the lesson, of course, is that, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim many, many years ago, and Hashem made us free forever. And yet we feel enslaved. We feel enslaved to our desires, to our impulses, to our habits, to other people, to society, to rules and routines that don't even belong to us, and many don't even make sense. And the work of B'chol Dar V'Dar, seeing ourselves as free, seeing ourselves as empowered by Hashem to choose, because Hashem is the one who takes us out of that limiting mindset where we don't have choices and we are slaves to the past, to other people, to our desires, to our habits. And that's going to, Be'ezus Hashem, be our focus today. How do we actually coach our child and ourselves to be empowered to make choices? It's a very exciting discussion, very simplified. I'm very excited about it. But first, let's start with somebody shared an amazing, beautiful moment of awareness and choice. It's a little different than the type that we always share, but here it is. Okay, she shared that she works as I'm going to read it in her words. I worked as a preschool teacher. This year, I was challenged with an extremely difficult child that has even stumped my advisor. We've been working on different plans and methods, but nothing seemed to be working to help this child be calm and cooperative in the classroom. And then last week, this child began showing signs of improvement and willingness to learn. We had a very few good days. We had a few very good days. I was totally stumped. What happened to bring about this miraculous change? I had a discussion with the other teachers in my classroom about it. One of them said, and she said this teacher's name, she said, "It's you. The change is you. You are just acting different. You're relating to the children differently. And that is what is making all the difference." I thought about that and was about to deny it, right? Because she was doing what we all do when we get a compliment that's too big for us to handle. We kind of minimize it, we deny it, we shift away the attention. But this person was giving her an incredible compliment. She's like, "It's you, you're acting different. And that's why this child is acting different." So I'm going back to her voice. I thought about that and I was about to deny it when it hit me. She was right. I was acting different, not to my students, but to myself. Baruch Hashem, I learned this amazing skill of recognizing false perceptions. Once again, as with my house, because this is the same person who wrote about her experience of letting go of that belief that she was not a good homemaker. Once again, as with my house, letting go of the I cannot do this. This child is too difficult to handle. What a lousy teacher I am. Letting go of that belief, that perception empowered me. I came into my class every day with a feeling of I can do this. I felt competent. And with that feeling, I was suddenly more capable of handling the challenge. The feeling was so strong that even my young little students were able to feel it. I think, and I could apply this with my children as well. And the most amazing part of this is that the work of catching myself doing false perceptions when I am beating myself up came from an entirely different situation. I caught myself in a false perception when I was thinking about my messy house and working on letting go of that belief that I am an incapable person. I felt like and turning that into a capable person. I felt like a super capable housekeeper, homemaker, and without my realizing it, it transferred into making me feel like a super capable teacher as well. Isn't that awesome? See what a little work can do. All I have to do is drop a pebble in the water and watch the ripple effects. So beautifully written and incredible work. And I don't think that's a little bit of work. It's huge. It's big time stuff to be able to catch yourself in that perception, going onto that shame train or going onto that blame or really hyper focusing on results or impressing other people or being external oriented, all of that stuff, calling ourselves names, all the things that we were talking about, giving power to our child, being afraid of results, being afraid of what other people are going to say, all that, letting go of that and stepping into the truth that is aligned with Hashem's reality is unbelievably liberating. And the most empowering part of that is that it empowers us to make choices. And that leads right into what we're going to talk about today. Let's open up. I'm going to ask you to open up, coaching a child to calm down and choose a way forward. Okay, we know that because we have a neshama, our neshama is limitless. It doesn't mean we could do anything. We can never defy nature, but we could defy lies. We could defy the illusion of limitations. We could defy I can't when I can't is really not true. How do we know when it's a lie or when it's not true? We could try. Or just to be very honest with ourselves, facts we talked about. The truth is, we did a lot of this also in the book discovery group. The book discovery group, we talked a lot about the difference between facts and perceptions and how to know the difference. But just one thing here, sometimes when you say you can't, if I can't is a actual factual reality, like you are tired and you didn't sleep and therefore you cannot function on 3 hours of sleep or on 6 hours of sleep or whatever it is, or I can't operate in such a messy room. There is always going to be truth to those facts. And those facts, we can't defy nature. We cannot escape being human. This tool that we're talking about in principle number 3 of I can choose and I am free, always free to make choices. Nobody can take away our power of choice. That goes for our attitudes. That goes for the things that we think, the perspective that we take on, the labels that we call ourselves, the beliefs that we have in our minds about ourselves, about other people, about our situations, about our experiences. And it goes for the words we say and the things that we do. We 100% have choices about our behavior, and it's a full-time job. And there's no better expression of freedom than actually making a choice, consciously making a choice. Principle number 3 is exercise your power of choice. Hashem made us free. So let's be free. Let's make those choices. Every time we make a choice, we're celebrating our freedom as Hashem's people. We're celebrating the freedom of having a neshama, of belonging to Hashem, of being not limited to circumstances that are not limited to follow the script of the natural order of the world as perceived by a value system that values things over people and measures value only really by what you can see and touch and feel and experience sensually, as opposed to the truth of Hashem's reality and the value of the true value of our neshama and Hashem's presence. So with that, let's go into the actual steps, a five-part process of how we can help our children absorb this idea and actually coach them through it. And as I was preparing this, first of all, I reviewed it with my 8-year-old daughter who was able to help me with the language in this. And some of them, most of this I do, and some of it while I was doing it, while I was preparing for it, I realized, hey, we can add that in. But it's if we want every child to say, yes, I can choose, then we need to give them a way how. It's just like you can't tell a child, use your words, and then don't give them the language. If you want a child to use the words instead of their hands, we need to give them the language. So if we want our child to choose, we need to teach them the process of what it looks like to make a choice in a difficult, overwhelming, frustrating situation. So let's just paint a scenario. My daughter is disappointed. She wants her sister's going somewhere and she really wants to go as well. And she's not able to because it's not her turn, it's not her time, it's not the right setting, it's not happening. She's not going. She's sitting there throwing a temper tantrum, she's overwhelmed, so upset. Okay, what are 5 steps that she can do and that I can coach her in doing so that she could calm down and choose a way forward? And as we're doing this with our child, it's a great, I realized as I was doing it and after I was doing it, that this is really an upgraded version. In a certain sense, it's more simplified, but because it's simpler, it's an upgraded version of the power tool that we used in week number 1. Okay, so number 1 is, the action is, for each number, there's an action, and then there's the language that we can use to talk our way through this step. So the first step is pause. It's the same as in the power tool. Pause. It's always the first thing. Slam the brakes. Just slow down. Okay, and the language for that is, I will stop and freeze. Literally freeze. I need to calm down. Okay, and that's something, if you're telling your child, okay, first let's try to calm down. And I would walk over to my child who's having that overwhelming, throwing herself around, kicking her feet, try to make eye contact, because that brings her back into the present and not, into crazy land, or I shouldn't say crazy land, la la land, but it's not la la land, but you know what I mean, right? Into just not being present and settled. So make eye contact, hold her hands and say, okay, let's calm down. Okay, we're gonna pause. And I wanna just say something. Really, the first time you wanna do this, it's a good idea to teach your child this, not when they're upset. Teach it to them on a good day. Teach it to them on a happy moment. Teach it to them when they come home from school one day and you're snuggling on the couch and you wanna, make a little chart for yourself, or show them this paper if you wanna use it as a thing. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Make little illustrations. I was going to make illustrations and I didn't yet get to it. But I think it's a good idea to make little pictures or use a puppet to teach this to your child, because each and every one of us is our child's best and foremost and most impactful teacher. So number 1 is to pause. And it's a good word for them to learn. Even at 3 years old, they can learn pause, or they can learn stop and freeze. Freeze. You could put on the music and practice freezing. What does it look like to freeze, to stop and freeze? Okay, that was number 1. Number 2 is, the action of number 2 is take 5 deep breaths. 5 deep breaths. In through your nose and out through your mouth. Some people like to do a little motion with their hands. Pick up the hands when you're breathing in, and then put them down on the lap while you're breathing. Slowly bring them down to your lap while you're breathing out. And this is something, again, we need to do it with the child, especially in the beginning. Making eye contact, breathe with me. Okay, let's do this together. Let's breathe. And then breathing out. Okay, number 3 is while the action is that while we're taking those 5 deep breaths or more, while your child is deep breathing, obviously the first 1 or 2, you're coaching them through that deep breathing, but then there's 3 things that we can do to talk to them and remind them while they are deep breathing. Number 1 is validate the emotion. And the language for that is just literally validate the emotion. Recognize, acknowledge, this is difficult. This is hard. This is overwhelming. You're so upset. You're really frustrated. You really wanted to go on that trip. You really wanted to go with your sister. You're really disappointed. This is so hard to handle. Feels like you mamish can't handle it. That kind of language. Really validate the emotion. I know it's so hard. Number 1. Number 2, ask Hashem for specific help. I think it's it's not something we want to dictate. I would role model it. Please, Hashem, help my Meidele feel better. Please, Hashem, help me calm down. Please, Hashem, help me remember that I have strength to do this. Please, Hashem, help me deep breathe and calm. Like, ask Hashem for the specific help that you need right then and there. Help me figure this out. Help me get calm. Help me get over this disappointment. Help me get through this moment. Number 3, remember that you will get through this. Okay, if once you've done this with your child more than once, you can, even the second time, you could say, remember last week, remember yesterday you were so upset and you got through it and you figured it out. Remember, we're going to do that again. It's going to be okay. It's the language that we use to help. Remembering a past success could remind the child, it's okay. You're going to be okay. It's going to pass. You're going to get through this. It's okay. You can do this. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4 is once you've done that, now they're not freaking out. Now they're not all over the place. Now they're not kicking and screaming. They're still very upset, but they've calmed down. They have your attention. You have, you have their attention. You're in eye contact mode. You're sitting there with them. You're connected. Now the child is in a place of making a choice. Before then, they were not in a place of making a choice. Before then, they were in fear. They were in denial. They were in rejection. They were not accepting. They were very upset. They were in their emotion. They were in there, to use adult language, they were in their amygdala. They were not in their executive functioning skills. But now, by calming down their emotions, now they're in their executive functioning skills, and we can help them, empower them, coach them to make a choice. So what can you do to help yourself feel better? And what can I do to help you help yourself? Not what I can do, not what can I do to help you feel better? What can you do to help you feel better? What can I do to help you help yourself? Because we want to make a child feel that they are empowered to help themselves. We want to remind a child of their personal empowerment. I can do this. I can help myself. So that's the language we want to use. What can you do to help yourself? Or how can I help you help yourself feel better? And then if they did something that they were not proud of, and that was part of their temper tantrum, you want to ask them, how can you, if you're not proud of what you did, are you proud of what you did? If you're not proud of what you did, what's something that you could do to fix it, even just a little bit? What's something that you could do to make it a little bit better for the other person, or for the broken toys, or for whatever it is that happened? What's something that you can do to fix it? What's something you can do to make it even a drop better? That's number 4. And of course, it should be something immediate. It should be something simple. It should be something practical. In that situation where my daughter really wanted to go somewhere that she was not able to go, once she calmed down, her question was, do you think you could take me on, and I asked her how you can help yourself. She said, do you think we can go on Thursday? I said, I'm not so sure about Thursday. She said, what about Sunday? I said, yeah. So could you write it down on your calendar? She knows if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. I said, sure. Could you write it down now on your calendar? And with that, she was able to feel better. Now some might argue, well, what if you would say no? But that is something I was able to say yes. We always want to, if I would say no, then the way I would say no is that's not going to work. But what could work is I would always give an option of something that could work, that would be a good offer to help make her feel better, because that's already where she's trying to help herself, and I want to be part of that process. I do want to help her. I do want to help, figure out something. She can't have this, but what could she have that works, that makes sense according to the situation. That was number 4. And number 5 is once the moment has passed and she's calmed down, and it doesn't have to be right then, it could be 5 minutes later, but this is such an important part of the process, to reflect. The action is to reflect, meaning to hold up a mirror. It's our job as mothers to hold up a mirror, and really we can do this for ourselves as well, to hold up a mirror to ourselves and say, great job. And this is something also we can do if we've done this with a group of kids, or with we've cleaned up, or we got over a difficult moment, reflect. Hey, we just did it. You just did it. I just did it. This language is so helpful. First of all, it helps us wire our brain towards success, towards celebrating, towards recognizing that we are empowered to help ourselves, and that with small actions we can take ourselves to happiness, to goodness, to peace, to the stuff that we want in our lives. It's such a good thing to give our kids that awareness that, hey, I did it. Thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for helping me. It was hard work, and then recognize what they did. That was really hard. You were so disappointed, but you breathed, you calmed yourself down, you thought of something you could do to help yourself. You reached out, you asked for help, you did it. We figured out a plan. This is amazing. You're really good at doing these things. You're really good at choosing. That's the tool. I'm going to open up to questions, and then we will take it further. And the question is, what do we do? How does this tool help a child who's totally out of control, so out of control that he's using his hands and his feet and just unable to calm down? So I think that, first of all, we want to try to catch the child before they start using their hands and feet. Some children have a very short fuse, and they go from 0 to 10 in an instant. But many children go from 0, then they get a little bit more upset. They go to 2, then they go to 3. And then they get very, very upset. So we want to try to nip it in the bud and try to tune in. And when we see them getting upset, try to tune in at that point. A child who's using their hands, it's still not, obviously we want to try to get them, if you know that this is a child who uses their hands, we want to be proactive, and try to get them to calm down before they use their hands. Also, to teach this child tools. What language can I use to help myself? What language can I use to help myself instead? What should I do? And what should he do instead of using his hands? Role model the language. Right. Give him the vocabulary. Say, I am frustrated. I am angry. I am disappointed. I don't like when you touch my things. I don't like when you break my things. Whatever it is that he is trying to say, that whatever it is, help him find words to express his feelings. Many times children who hit have a problem with language. They just don't know how to express themselves. I'm not saying that as a way of excusing their behavior. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying as a way of, it's good to know that sometimes it's good to know something that we can do to empower a child. Because if we just say, use your words, if they don't have words, it doesn't help. We want to teach them the vocabulary so that they could use their words. Mm-hmm. But still, let's say they know their words, and you tried that, and now they're just hitting and having a temper tantrum and they're upset. I still think this tool could be used. If they're very much, out of control physically, the last thing we want to do is, put them behind the door and close the door, and not let them out until they calm down, put them in timeout and lock them away. When a child is very upset, they should never be alone in that upset, in that disappointment and pain, because that's the worst thing that could happen for them. They feel out of control. So them being alone and out of control, that is even worse. Okay, so a child is totally out of control. Okay, if it's a young child, we come up behind them and give them, literally hold them and say, I'm here for you, and I know you can do this. It's so hard. I hear you. Let's calm down. Let's deep breathe. And you go right into that tool, but you're holding them. I think it's very important to try to make eye contact, because eye contact helps bring a child back into the present from being in their own world of negative spiral. They stop spiraling when they connect with love. Eyes are the windows to the soul. I really think it's a very helpful thing to make eye contact. Let's say a child is older, and let's say they do not want to be held. So have a conversation before that when this happens, if this happens, it shouldn't happen. Tell them that before when they feel themselves getting upset, they should come to you and tell you that they need help. That's the best thing, because you don't want them to get to that place where they're hitting. Once they're hitting, it becomes a bigger, the more upset they are, the more entrenched they are in that negative spiral, the more work it takes to get out and to calm down. So we want to try to catch them at the earliest point of being triggered. The best thing is if you can, tell this child, as soon as you get upset, come to me. I'm here for you. I want to help you. We're going to get over this. I'm going to help you get your, what you need. We're going to deal with things together. We're going to work it out. Let's try to ask for help before you get very, very upset. So this is something to have a conversation with a child one-on-one, take a walk around the block, or find a quiet time to be able to have that conversation. And keep an eye out. Sometimes it's hard to keep an eye out because maybe you're in the kitchen, maybe the kid is in a different room, and you hear the escalating noise, but you're busy, you're distracted. The second if you could tune in, give that boy a reminder. Do we need help? Do you need some space? Do we need a calming down time? Another important word that I didn't include in this is space. Thank you so much for that word. Space is such an important time. Do you need space to help you calm down? That's a very, very, because space is not just in time. Space is also in location. Sometimes a kid does need space. Sometimes we need they might say, can you move the baby? Can you move the little, he's trying to build his tower and the 3-year-old keeps breaking it. It could be very annoying and could be very frustrating. And sometimes for a 10-year-old child, it's too much to ask for, that they should tolerate, and they should have that kind of patience that even adults would have a hard time with. So I don't know if that helps. I hope it gives you a little bit something to try, and also gives them the language of emotions. It builds their emotional intelligence to recognize, oh, when I do this, or when people do this, it's a sign of anger, it's a sign of frustration, it's a sign of showing emotion.
Also, they might want to stop because they don't want to be doing what you're saying that they're doing. So they might just stop what they're doing.
That's an older kid. An older kid would get really angry. Stop telling me.
No, I wouldn't do this with an older kid.
Yeah, this is for a younger.
No, not an older kid. No, I wouldn't do it with an older kid. But I'm saying, but even younger kids are like, they'll be on Hafkana, like they'll stop doing it. I think maybe not.
Either that, or it makes them laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, I was just thinking about asking you how to respond to my 12-year-old student, a boy, who is so stressed out with life as he has learning processing deficits, along with a big delay in reading skills. He said to me with tears rolling down his face that he is afraid he will have a heart attack, and that he feels he is a 12-year-old in the body of a 50-year-old. And it's not fair that life is so stressful for him. I feel like he needs more intense help than these 5 steps. Any more principles I can teach him to help him relax? He's already practicing deep breathing all the time. I validate his emotions. I told him to look at me in the eye and told him that he will be okay and get through this. Afterwards, he did calm down and continued with his day. Surprisingly, did not feel a need to discuss later and was all smiles. He's opening up to me because I am not his social worker, rather his private reading teacher, so I am in a special position to help him. What more tools can I offer him in areas of chizuk? wow, this sounds like a lot. A child with a reading deficit who is intelligent is in a lot of pain. And this pain and these 5 steps are like a Band-Aid for ordinary disappointments, frustrations, and the stuff that get in the way of a typical child, the regular disappointment. But a 12-year-old boy who has a hard time reading is in a tremendous amount of pain. And that is a whole different topic of discussion. He needs a lot of love. He needs to come to accept himself. He needs good, heavy quality reading intervention so that he could feel empowered. He needs to believe in himself. It would be amazing if he could develop a different talent so that he could see himself as competent in a different area of his life. It's a tremendous pain that many of us cannot relate to unless we have been there. It is it's a daily tragedy. I mean, for a child to use that vocabulary, that they feel like they're having a heart attack, that they feel like they're a 12-year-old in a 50-year-old body, it breaks my heart. He has to deal with that pain and develop love for himself and competence in other areas. And you should be blessed for all the love that you're doing with him, and definitely bring this to attention of his parents or anyone else who's in the position of addressing his bigger need, that huge gaping hole that is so painful. And all this stuff that we've been learning about, like learning how to love himself, learning the value of his neshama, he's probably going to need that as he grows. Okay, what if one sibling is always bothering his brother? Then we could do this all day. First of all, once we're doing this, kids learn how to do it on their own. And if a sibling is bothering their brother, that's a different story. You know, you want to figure out why. What is getting that? Sometimes a child who's constantly bothering others is unhappy and they need time out. Time out doesn't mean as a punishment, but it means like time with you, like take a pause, try to analyze the situation. What is bothering this child? What's getting him so upset that he keeps bursting out like a seltzer bottle at his brother? What's that negative energy that he's unleashing on everybody else around him? Where's the leak? How can you stop that leak? How can you fill him up so that he doesn't feel so empty and constantly bothering other people? I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, somebody else asked a question that they were dropping off their child in preschool, and the child said, "Everybody hates me." And that was extremely painful to hear. And she was asking how to deal with that. If a little girl says, "Everybody in school hates me." So I think it's so painful for a little girl to say that. I would walk in with that little girl to her preschool and try to assess the situation, try to get a feeling of what's going on in the classroom just by observing. She should not overhear you telling her teacher how concerned you are that everybody hates her. Just say, "I'm going to go with you. I'm going to be there with you for a few minutes." I would not invalidate her emotion. I would just say, "Wow, you're really feeling afraid. You don't like that. You really feel like people don't like you." Just validate that emotion and say, let's think about this. Let's find we could figure out a way to deal with this. What do you think? What do you think you want me to do? Should we talk to Mora? Should we try to see how to get the kinderlach to like you better? Do you want to learn how to get along better? This is a great conversation to have, but before or after, I would try to get a sense of what is going on in the classroom. Sometimes I've seen mothers move into like victim mode right with their child. Maybe it triggers something in them that they were bullied as a child, Maybe it triggers a memory of a different child being bullied, and or a relative that was bullied, and they're like, oh my, this is going to be a terrible disaster, and they move in. Who's bullying you? Who's bullying? It's interesting that 4-year-olds already know the word bully. He's bullied. Used to be a kid would say, you know, Mora, she took away my snack. Now they say, Mora, she bullying me. You know, it's the kids have so much awareness of this word. And the mother would stamp in and say, you know, storm in and say, who's bullying my kids? And, you know, speak to the teacher in front of the child. I think that perpetuates the child's image of themselves as a victim, number one. And number two, it reinforces the child's belief of themselves as a victim and someone to feel sorry for. But not, you know, don't invalidate, definitely validate the feeling. Don't give too much emotional energy to it, because you really don't know. Maybe the child is saying that because somebody, you know, didn't give her a turn when she wanted it. Sometimes if a child is oldest at home and used to getting everything first and getting everything the best, it's hard for them to be in a classroom where maybe they're not the cutest anymore. Maybe they're not getting their way. Maybe they determine that other people don't like them just because other things are going not their way. So it's very important to have your own sense of what's going on in the classroom, and to speak to the teacher privately when the child is not around, and to work on this with the child going forward. But I would be careful not to dismiss it, because if it's true, you want to empower your child to, yes, get along. And at the same time, be careful not to give it too much energy, because once there's emotional energy and this is how the child is getting attention. This is how there's a connection. This is something that you talk about every single day. Oh, did you get along with everyone today? You know, was anyone nice to you? Was anyone mean to you? That becomes the relationship binder. That's not where we want to go with any issue. And this is something that applies not just to being bullied, not just to being, you know, having a problem in school, but really with any situation or any challenge that a child is dealing with. I hear someone trying to speak up. Go ahead. In a nutshell, what somebody is sharing here, so powerful, that she's been doing this work. I think that you've been also doing the work, not just of this group, but also of the book. In this group, we're kind of adapting what we've been doing in the book in a much deeper level into our parenting. But in that group, we've been talking a lot about, and we talked about it here also in this group, in the parenting series, of really noticing what's going on in our minds, noticing the beliefs and the thoughts and the rules that we are playing for, that we are living by. And how do we know when to stop and notice our beliefs whenever we're feeling an intense emotion? It's always good. That's a symbol that there's a belief worth paying attention to. So there's a teacher of a preschool, and there's a certain child in her class that she's always very gracious to, and went out of her way to be kind to every child. But somehow with this child, her instinct was not of love. It was like of overwhelming, of almost like annoyed tolerance. Although in action, she came through always, and child would never know. But that was her instinct. And then she kind of pushed it away or pushed it to the side, and then came through with love. But one time, the child approached her, and she had it was such a blatant feeling that she stopped cold and asked herself, what is going on inside of my mind and heart? And she realized that I really don't, I have such an overwhelming emotion around this child. And then she asked herself, why? And then she realized that this child doesn't speak clearly, and it makes her feel very incompetent. Like it's very anxiety provoking, and very, makes us feel incompetent. Like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to take care of him if I can't even hear him. And that little bit of anxiety and that little bit of like feeling of like, maybe I'm not good enough as a teacher for this child, because I can't give this child what they need. They need more than what I could give them. Created that feeling of like annoyance and frustration and a little bit of distance. And the minute she realized it, you used words that I found myself using a lot of times, and I hear a lot of people using these words. She said, the minute I realized it, I laughed out loud because that discovery is so startling and so liberating and so joyous, because in that moment of discovery, it's like, oh, okay, now that you see it, it's not there anymore. That negative energy disappears. The negative energy, like in that moment of awareness, the negative energy is gone. And we laugh because it's such a delight that just doesn't come in words. This is such a great question. This is such a great question. So let me just repeat it, okay? We've been talking about beliefs that are triggered by shame. What about emotions that are triggered by shame, right? What about plain, I am overwhelmed. I am working so hard. There's so much that I'm doing, taking care of the children, Baruch Hashem. Many of us work. Many of us have so many things that we do outside the house, inside the house, multiple children, different ages, different stages, sometimes on a very limited budget, sometimes in very limited space. I'm obviously not paraphrasing exactly your question, but I'm just making it broader for everybody. And then my child comes and I get frustrated, or and they asking me for something and I respond with resentment. I'm triggered into annoyance and resentment. It's not shame. It's just, I am so overwhelmed. And what more do you want me to do? And what more can I do? And don't you see that I'm so busy? Don't you see that I can't? And what is this? So I could tell you how it's connected to shame, but I don't think that that's the point. Here's what I think. Okay, as mothers, we assign ourselves a job description, and then every day we keep score of how we keep score of how we are doing in fulfilling our job description. So let's say my job description is, for my 2-year-old, my job description is, keep them clean, keep them safe, give them healthy food, put them to bed on time, right? Keep them out of danger. That would make me, that's subconsciously my job description as a 2-year-old, right? Hold them, cuddle them, love them, feed them. Sometimes we give ourselves job descriptions that are bigger than we could handle. And when we have an impossible job description, for me personally, whenever I'm feeling resentful to my children, I realize if I trace back the lines, very often it's because I have an unrealistic job description. My job description might mean to make everybody happy all the time, to take care of everybody's needs. If my job description is to make sure everybody has exactly what they need in their briefcase and in the fridge and in the closets and in the pantry at all times, if I am the quintessential stock manager in this house, then when my kid comes home and is missing a pencil, I'm so resentful that they lost their pencil yet again, because now I became a failure of a mother. I'm going to be that mother that's irresponsible and doesn't have her kids don't have that pencil that they need. Or if my job is that they have to be happy at all times, then when a kid trips over the last few steps because they were being wild and they hurt themselves, I'm angry because now you made me a failure of a mother because my kids are not happy. So we have to be careful of our job descriptions. And sometimes those job descriptions need to be adjusted. Whenever there's resentment or anger, very, very often it's a job description that needs to be adjusted. Is it possible for us to take care of every single need all the time? A friend told me that as a teacher, her goal is 100% of participation from 100% of the students, 100% of the time. Okay, that's her goal as a teacher. That's her job description. 100% of the students, 100% participation, 100% of the time. huge, okay? Me personally, if I say 100% of my children's needs 100% of the time, I would be very resentful because I think it's impossible to take care of our children's needs 100% of the time, 100% of their needs. There's always going to be things that will fall through the cracks. And if we change our job description to being the best role model, and I don't know if I didn't actually ever spend time and work out what is the ideal mother's job description. I'm sure if you and I would sit down, we would be able to, we could spend 3 hours hashing this out. What is the ideal job description for a Yiddish mama? But one thing I think for sure is, I could tell you what it's not. It's not take care of 100% of people's needs 100% of the time, because it's impossible. It's literally impossible. And if I have that job description, number one, I'm going to feel like a failure. And as a result of subconsciously feeling like a failure, I'm going to be annoyed and resentful. Like the story that this person just shared before, subconsciously, this child with a speech impairment was giving her, why was she frustrated? Because she had in her heart, her job description is, I must take care of this, of 100% of my students' needs 100% of the time. This child had a need that she could not address. And as a result, she naturally felt resentful towards this child. She didn't even realize, subconsciously, this child, every time this child turned to her with a question, with a comment, with anything that she said, this child was giving this teacher a necklace to wear. I am a failure of a teacher. I am incompetent. I am not good enough. I'm inadequate. And of course, anyone who gives me such a label, I will not like them. So this child had a need that was beyond her. And the minute she realized, hey, this kid has a need that is bigger than me, and it's actually bigger than me, and it's not about me. It's got nothing to do with me. It was so liberating, and the resentment was gone. So many times I know you might think, well, what do you mean? Our children, who else should give them their needs? Who else should prepare them snack and their clothing and their toys and also give them attention and love and nurture that connection? Who else? They only have one mother, right? So it's difficult. And that's where what the other person was saying before can come in handy, and like, what can I do to help myself so that I can be there for my children with what matters most? And sometimes that means getting more help. Sometimes that means lowering our standards. Sometimes it means, adjusting the schedule. Sometimes it means letting go of certain responsibilities that we were doing. But definitely, we cannot give our children 100% of our needs, 100 of their needs, 100% of the time. And if we give ourselves permission to focus instead on doing our best within the moment, we want to be a role model of healthy behavior. That's my job description. That's really my job description, to be a role model of the behavior that I want them to have, to be a role model of an Erlich Yid. I think that to me is what comes to my mind as my simplest job description, to role model love and connection and simcha as a Yid. From that perspective, if a child turns to me with their need, it's not an order that I must obey. It's not a test that if I don't pass it, I will fail. It's not a request even that if it's something that's bigger than me or difficult for me, that if I say yes, I just lost points in my job description as a successful mother, as the mother I want to be. It's just a request. It's a bid for one form of connection. It just is. It's not anything beyond that. It could be even that you have, I happen to know you, and you're an eminently qualified mother who's extremely emotionally in tuned. So you have I would imagine that you have a very high standard of what your house can be and what you want it to be and what it, in your mind, it should be. And And while that is probably something that all of us want to emulate, at the same time, if that becomes, sometimes when that standard becomes like, if I don't do that, then I'm a failure, you know, it's hard to live with that. You know what I mean? It's like a child who's smart, a child who's a really good artist. When they make a picture, very often, the minute they make a mistake, they're erasing, or they're crossing out, or they crumple up, they say it's not good. Why do they say it's not good? Because they're such a talented artist, they're so smart, so creative, that their vision of what the picture should be or what the picture could be is so much bigger and so much better than what it is. So then whatever they drew is not going to match what the vision is in their mind, because their mind is so much bigger than their skill or than their realistic capacity as the child that they are. And
So
sometimes I think
Shterna,
we do that to ourselves because we're so in tune, because we're so emotionally sensitive, because we're so caring, because we're so spiritually and emotionally connected. We have a high standard that maybe is impossible. And that maybe, I personally, that's that from there comes my statement that I love saying, that a house is a construction zone. It's never a finished product. I never have to have that storybook picture house when you walk in and, the father is sitting here and the mother's sitting there and the children are playing nicely and this one is that interaction. I try not to keep that picture in my mind as, that's going to be my old, whenever I have such a moment, I take a picture in my heart and I'm like, okay, this. And I encourage everyone around me, I'm like, everyone look around the table. Isn't this special? Aren't we blessed, Baruch Hashem, for this moment? But we have so many moments where kids are fighting, bells are ringing, things are breaking, the house is a wreck, I'm feeling dysfunctional. And for me to be able to look at all that and say, this is a construction zone. We're building people, we're building lives, we're building worlds. And I am doing my best right now. And it's okay if things are not the way they ideally could be. This is how they are. And I'm going to embrace it and accept it with love. And me being able to do that with dignity. And I'm not talking about tolerating dysfunction. I know that I'm talking to somebody who has such a high standard, I'm not talking about tolerating dysfunction, but sometimes it is going to be a dysfunctional day when I'm not feeling well, let's say, and I'm going to say, okay, I tell everyone, I'm going to let things slide today. I'm being easy on myself today because I want to focus on what matters the most. And I'm not going to make myself into a shmata by doing that. So that in itself is a role model, especially as our children get older and they can be invited into our thought process and we can explain, why we're choosing what we're choosing and the story behind our decisions to let certain things go while we attend to other things. Sometimes an older kid will tell me, Ma, why are you letting them have candy? Why are you letting them have another snack? Why aren't you putting them to bed on time? Why are you letting them just, play a game at 10 o'clock at night? It's totally dysfunctional, but I might have a reason that day. And if it's an older kid, I'll explain it, and it's not my ideal version. I think that child, they should be tucked into bed with a hug and a kiss and a song and present, attentive mother at 8:30 in the night, not at 10 o'clock and certainly not at 10:30. It's going to happen. And me being okay with that is just another way of role modeling that, we're perfectly imperfect and that's okay. And another quote that I like to say always is, I can do anything, but I definitely cannot do everything. So I can do anything, but we can't do everything. And sometimes, and I want to say this with caution, that it's not okay for a child to be perpetually left in disappointment. But once in a while, if a child wants something and can't have it, even if it's a reasonable need, even if it's a need and not just a want, but that's where they learn, being part of a family does mean that sometimes they're going to have more love, and they're going to have many benefits and siblings for the rest of their life to share their journey forever with Hashem's help, right? Baruch Hashem, it's a blessing. And at the same time, it does mean that, they have a need and it's going to have to wait for a few days. being able to tolerate that is the making of a healthy adult. Being able to, go with the flow and tolerate disappointment, reasonable disappointment, and even sometimes unreasonable disappointment in a reasonable way, if you know what I mean. In other words, not all the time, and it's once in a while, and it's and it's explained, and it comes with conversation, and they see that you do follow through eventually. I'm not taking you today. We're not running out to buy that pencil today. I'm so sorry. I'll write you a note. I will get you one tomorrow. Whatever it is, or maybe borrow from a neighbor, as embarrassing as it is for that child to have to do that. I'm just giving an example of a pencil. There's so many things that our children need. It's endless. Doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, clothing, shoes, boo-boos, things to look into, phone calls to make, teachers to connect with, tests to study for home. I mean, the list is endless. And we didn't even talk about shopping for clothing. And as the kids get older, their needs, their universe expands and their needs expand. And the older they get, the less it's possible for us to satisfy all their needs. So we could do everything. We can do anything. We just cannot do everything. And being comfortable with that is also giving them the space to grow into healthy adults who are not chas v'shalom self-centered, but have the resilience to deal with the ups and downs, the inevitable disappointments of life. Thank you so much for bringing that up that question, because that was a really important question, I'm sure, for everybody. Thank you. There's children will be resentful about anything that they decide to be resentful about. That sounds like a smart child who figured it out. I don't think we need to defend it. I don't think we need to engage in that conversation. You just validate the emotion. Yeah, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard when there's so many people around. Sometimes it's hard when you have to wait for a turn. Sometimes it's hard and you don't like it. And just being present with that and allowing it to breathe. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to offer a solution, but you're validating it is sometimes hard. That's it. It's okay. You're not afraid of the emotion. It's okay. It's okay. And then when we're having a lot of fun, I wouldn't say it specifically to this child, because then it's like, aha, I got you here. But we are so blessed to have this wonderful family. This is such a fun game. We can never play this with one person. I am so grateful to Hashem that we have this moment, this togetherness, this Hanukkah party, this Matzah Shabbos Malav Malka, this Friday night, special time together, because this is just such a special bracha, But I wouldn't say it in context of that moment of disappointment. I would just let that emotion breathe, because it's okay to have unpleasant emotions. It's not scary for us. Thank you so much. I just want to address one more question and then we'll call it a night and the end of this series. Somebody wrote, if I need to be a role model of behavior 100% of the time, if that's my job description, I will definitely increase my failure feelings consciously and subconsciously. Thank you very much for saying that. That's very well said. Make it a job description that you can get 100 every single day. Make it a job description that you can get 5 stars, the best every single day, every single minute. Make it a job description that's totally dependent on you and on nobody else. And I think being a role model of behavior 100% of the time, for me personally, that's something I wanna live by. I'm comfortable because that includes downtime, that includes relaxing time, that includes making mistakes, that includes slipping. I hope, I don't know, role model to me doesn't mean that I have to be perfect. It means I have to be in a constant state of trying to be aware, trying to learn, trying to grow. That to me is what I want a role model. Reaching for joy, reaching for growth, reaching for connection. I think that it's still something that I personally would want. And yeah, it might make me sometimes feel like I'm not doing a good job, but then that would be the truth, that I'm not doing right then a good job. And I would want to change it. It's something that it's entirely in my hands. It wouldn't make me resentful of other people. It wouldn't make me angry and frustrated and, intolerant of other people. But maybe what might work for you is change the word role model of behavior 100% of the time to I want to be in a constant state of growth, of openness to learn, of trying my best 100% of the time, or of, making good choices, at least make conscious choices 100% of the time. Honestly, I think this is something that each and every one of us on our own, I want to encourage you to chew it over, reflect on it, talk about it with your friends, come up with a job description that you can give yourself, that's entirely possible for you to get 100 every single day because we can, because we owe it to ourselves because we have a job description right now in your mind. There's a job description, and that based on that job description, you are rating yourself well. You're either getting good scores and you're feeling good about yourself and you're parenting every single day, or you're in a pattern of shaming yourself, and that shaming causes you to escape. It causes you to be intolerant. It causes you to be angry at yourself and leak out negative energy at the people you love the most, at the people you care about the most. So I want to encourage you to, yes, take a moment, stop and think, what is my job description? What is the rules, that foundational rule that I live by? What's my mission statement as a mother for me that's in my hands that I want to measure my success, by every single day? And of course, it doesn't mean that we're always going to get I said we should be able to get 100. Getting 100 doesn't mean we're perfect. Getting 100 means that we always are in a place of awareness and growth and learning, and most importantly, willingness to keep learning, to keep having these conversations, to keep growing, and to keep trying to give our children the best that we can. Somebody's waiting to ask a question. Go ahead. Good Nacht, everybody. I want to thank you all for being part of this series. It's been real. It's been wonderful. I want to say a huge, huge special thanks to those of you who contributed to the conversation by email, by sharing your questions, by sharing your victories, and by speaking up live on the calls. You are the ones who made, especially tonight, those of you, and it's the truth for every single night, but those of you who are on now, you can see this, you're speaking up makes it live, makes it meaningful, and makes it so, so, so special for each and every one of us, myself included, makes it so enjoyable and enriching. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to another series at a different time. And good Shabbos.